Yes, welcome to Home Studio Q&A here on Studio Live today. This is our weekly live Q&A show where I answer your questions about home and mobile recording, about interfaces, about mixers, about microphones, whatever you got on your mind, we're going to talk about it here. And the beautiful part of this show, as I say every week, is it's not just me. You get access to the whole Studio Live Today community. So whether you're here live on YouTube or whether you're watching on the replay or listening to the podcast, then you've got access to a whole bunch of super smart music brains that are going to be able to help you create, record, and release your best music. Today, we've got a bunch of questions to go through that I've had through the week. We've also got folks here live, so if you do have a question and you're here live, just put a big word question in front of it. That's going to make sure that I'll spot it in the chat and I'll be able to circle back and hopefully answer or at least handball your question on to the community so someone can give you some answers. Let's dive into the show now, though. Before we get to the questions, I have a topic of the week. And this week, we're talking Masterclass. So what is Masterclass? Masterclass is an online learning platform that I've been using for over a year now. You might have seen the ads probably on this very channel, on YouTube, on Facebook, around the place. This is where the people that are the professionals in their field, like pretty much the top tier people, come together to teach you how to do the thing that they are professional at. So for musicians, there is a heap of really cool music courses on Masterclass. Full disclosure, I am affiliated with Masterclass in that I'm part of the Masterclass affiliate program. So if you do join Masterclass or you do purchase a class using the links, and there is a link down in the description of this video, then they will break off a small chunk and send it my way. So full disclosure up front. And I say that, and the reason that I mentioned that is I've been using Masterclass for over a year just personally, and I haven't been affiliated with them all. So the way that I choose who I'm affiliated with, it's not that a company comes to me and says, "Hey, Pete, we've got this product. Can you just say it's good?" And then I go, "Sure." And then a big comical sack of cash gets dropped over to me, and then I say, "Please use this product." It works the other way. When I find something that I really like, I recommend it. And then if there is an affiliate program, well, yeah, I would be silly, wouldn't I, not to participate in that if it's something that I believe in. So what is Masterclass? Why should you check it out? So these are in-depth, high-quality courses. The one that I have done a review on is the Tom Morello course. If you want to find that, just search my name, Pete Johns Tom Morello. If you're a guitarist, if you want to learn some electric guitar chops and you're sort of at that intermediate level, Tom Morello is your guy. It's a really fascinating course. And the beautiful thing about these courses is they're kind of half learning and half tuition and half stories and inspiration and learning about the person and their journey. And the reason I mention that is that since then, I've done other courses. So I've done the Herbie Hancock teaching jazz, super cool. I've done the Hans Zimmer teaching composing for music for movies and TV. That was amazing. And I'm in the middle of Sheila E. teaching drums, which is just epic. Sheila E., drummer for Gloria Stefan, just had an amazing career, wonderful percussionist and wonderful person. Here's the key takeaway from all of these, though, is that it's interesting because when you are online, like when you're on the internet and you're talking to people that call you professionals, and you'll know they're professionals because they'll be like, "I've been in the recording industry for 27 years, so you always have to do this and this and this and this and this." Problem with that is you then look at their sort of back catalogue and you're like, what have you actually worked on lately? Like what's your body of work? And sometimes, between you and me, it's a little bit lacking. And anyone that has to tell you how many years they've been in the industry is usually hiding the fact that I haven't done much lately. So I say all that not to insult those people, but to say that the people that are doing these courses that are the absolute top of their game pros, they don't say anything like that. In fact, it's refreshingly reassuring that the sort of things that Tom Morello says about guitar is just find your sound. Don't go trying to copy other people's sound. Don't listen to people that say you have to do X, Y, and Z to create music. Create your own sound. Do it with what you have. And recently doing the Sheila E. video, it was fascinating because she got there in the very first lesson. She's like, "You want to learn percussion? You don't have any drums? Don't worry about it." She gets pots and pans. She gets like grinders and shakers. She just makes up all this own stuff, records this drum loop, and it's just all of the different percussion instruments that she's found around her kitchen. And again, for someone who has access to the top quality gear to say that, amazing. Hans Zimmer in his course, you'd think, oh, Hans Zimmer's got to have this massive production studio. He works with orchestras around the world. He does all these things. Yeah, he does. But you know what he says? He's like, I fully admit that someone with their laptop or their phone is going to be the next generation of music producers. And you can do as much on that. And he showed, like, he uses Logic. He's a Logic user. So he's instantly cool because he uses Apple stuff. But he basically said, yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't need all the gear. You don't need all the know-how. It's about the resilience, the determination, and the learning, being a lifelong learner. So I say all of that to say, if you are looking for some motivation, some next tips, and you might be saying, Pete, don't you have a channel where you do all this stuff but for free? Why are you telling me to go and pay money to listen to a professional when I could watch you or any other 1,000 people for free? Here's the difference though. These courses are like end to end, beautifully produced, and they have this order and sequence of them that you can sit down, you can either binge watch them like I've done, like over 10 hours, 12 hours course, or you can do like an hour every day or two, and you're just learning something new, and then you can go back and revise. You can jump around to different sections, watch them on your phone, watch them on your laptop. They are super cool. So please, the prices vary for different courses and for the subscription in different parts of the world. But if you're interested, jump down in the description and check that out. Thank you for listening to me rant. We are now going to jump in and answer some of your questions. We'll do the questions that have been here from the folks live to get started because you have all been very patient. So I'm going to bring my iPad a little closer to me here so I can check the questions that we've had here. We do have a question here from John Walker. Says, Pete, I'm using the Ravenscroft 275 piano app in GarageBand. If I try to change any of the notes, it loses the pedal information. Is there a solution for this, please? So you're changing the notes and it's changing the pedal information. That's super strange. I haven't personally come across that. But so you're talking to the sustain pedal clearly. So if you're changing the note, because the sustain pedal should be on its own separate track. So when you've got your green virtual MIDI tracks, you should have your sustain pedal at the bottom and then you have your notes in the top section. Might be something that we need to jump into and look into it in a little bit more detail, I'd say, because again, I haven't come across anything like that personally, but it might just be that you need to change. I've done a video on this. If you search my name, Sustain, I show you how to sort of move and manipulate the sustain track. It sounds like it's something a little bit more than that. So, yeah, hopefully you can get a solution. But, yeah, not something I've come across. Maybe someone else has some tips or advice for you on that one. Let's continue on here. We've got another question here from Tomlinson's family. Says, my mix sounds good when mixing on my iPhone with earphones, but it sounds terrible when played without earphones and on social media platforms, e.g. YouTube. Please help. Right. So the basics of if a mix is sounding good on your phone with earbuds, it's probably sounding too thin when you're playing it elsewhere. So here's the thing. When you're using your phone, it will sound different. So the mix that you're actually putting together, there's different bass and treble response. And did you say it was earphones? Depends on the sort of earphones you're using, but some earphones will hype the bass. So some earphones will really punch up the bass, meaning you think you've got this bassy mix that's sitting beautifully, then you go play it on a different speaker, and the bass is all but disappeared because you were getting that overhyped bass. So what you need to do, the best thing to do, is to reference your mix in as many places as possible before you actually release it. So before you release to YouTube or Facebook or your streaming platforms, is to reference your mix. So that means taking the final mix, listening to it in the car, listen to it on a Bluetooth speaker, your home stereo, your earbuds, your iPhone speaker, like find different places and ways to listen to the track, and then go back and adjust. Because if you're finding that it's sounding really good and bassy on your headphones, but then you go play it on some stereo speakers and it doesn't, well, you may need to find that balance in between. So it's not about making it sound perfect on one listening device. You kind of need to make it in between so it's going to sound good on everything, as opposed to just really good on one and then terrible on other devices. I know it's a pain. It's one of the hardest things to do in music, to be honest, to find that balance and to find the mix that's going to work and is going to translate across all the different platforms. The other thing to keep in mind is that when you release something to Facebook in particular or YouTube, you're talking compression here. So make sure you have the highest quality audio before you do that. Don't compress it down to MP3 or M4A and then add it to a video and then push it out to YouTube or Facebook, because YouTube and Facebook recompress what you put there. SoundCloud as well recompresses. So make sure you've got a full high resolution WAV file before you actually release it. That way the compression is going to have the least possible impact. So hopefully that helps you out there. We'll scroll up here and see if we've got any other questions that have jumped in, and then we'll go into the questions of the week. That may be the only couple that we've got there. I think so. Quick question here from Sean. Have you ever used a MIDI guitar pickup on iOS? I haven't, but I'm probably about to. I was talking about this in a live stream for my patrons over on Patreon, but I've recently got myself the X-Tone Pro. In fact, I've got it right here, so I'll just show you the box real quick. The X-Tone Pro, which apparently is compatible with things like MIDI guitar, because it's got MIDI, it's got audio interface, it's got guitar interface. I'll be giving this a run here on the channel in the next week or two, so if you are interested in that, stay tuned for that. But for now, no, I haven't actually done a whole lot of MIDI guitar related stuff at this point in time. Question here from Cody Bradley. Which piano in GarageBand has a better sound, grand piano or classical grand? I used to use grand piano, and now, after watching a bunch of Dan Baker's videos, shout out to you, Dan, if you watch this show, I use the classical grand because it sounds better. Not for all types of music, but it's definitely my default go-to piano that I use in GarageBand now, the classical grand. It just has something about the resonance and the tone that you get from that classical grand, just sounds a little bit nicer. Can't really put my finger on why, but it sounds a little bit nicer. I also use the Ravenscroft 275 on the recommendation of, I think, Thomas Gillane, who might have seen here, and other folks, because that is it's expensive, like a $50 piano here in Australia, but that is a beautifully sampled grand piano, and it sounds just spot on, amazing. So that is my piano related advice. Alrighty, I think we've caught up. We have one more here from Eves. Eve. Is it Eve or Eves? See, now I don't even know if to put the S. Question, how do you manage to correct the small miss in your voice, if possible? Some small miss in your voice? Miss or hiss? Vocal recording? I'm not quite sure exactly what the question is, but yeah, if there's small errors or small hiss or small S sounds, all comes down to EQ generally. So you either need to edit your vocal to make sure if it's like mistakes and things that you're trying to blend together, you need to edit and use some splitting and some editing to get that down. And then if you're just trying to enhance your vocal, if you get some S sounds, they're usually up in the top end of the EQ spectrum. I've used GarageBand, so I use LRC5. It's my favorite multi-band EQ, 5 bands, nice Q control. You can do some very nice just like cuts that are, what am I trying to say? I've lost my words today. The type of EQ move where you move just down in a little cone. Wow. Notching. There you go. Knew we'd get there. You can notch out particular frequencies. So if there's a frequency that you don't like, because you've got an SE, hissy, lispy voice like me, then you can find that and move it down. There's also de-esser plugins. And I would check out Jade Starr's series, How to App. She did a whole week on vocal plugins and vocal recording, which was very cool. So jump over to Jade's channel. That would be useful for you to do. Let us jump in here and take a look at some of the questions that have been coming in on the channel through the week. And we're going to start with this one here from our buddy Zagoro. So this is to do with GarageBand on a Windows PC. And I thought this was funny because, I mean, I've done a video here where the title is GarageBand on a Windows PC. No, 100% no. Except when you can. So Zagoro's asked a question. If I manage to download it through VMware, will it detect my microphones connected to my PC properly? And can I then save the tracks and move them to my iPhone? So the short answer to all of this is no. One of the biggest problems with this, so by the way, the question is, can you download and use GarageBand on a Windows PC? You can't. So if you're running Windows, there is no GarageBand for Windows. You can look for something like FL Studio or Cakewalk by BandLab. They're good alternatives if you're looking for that, or even Audacity on your Windows PC. You can record with all of those. But if you use a virtual machine, which is what VMware is, and you manage to work around the terms of service and you manage to get a copy of macOS on an Intel Windows-based PC, and then you try and run GarageBand, this is the exact problem you're going to have. And everyone that says to me, well, actually, Pete, you can run GarageBand on a PC, you just have to do all these things, my response back is, can you please show me where you've hooked up a microphone and a guitar and an audio interface and you get low latency monitoring and you get high quality recording? And because of the nature of VMware, it's not designed for latency-free monitoring because it's using a bunch of additional resources to run the virtual machine. I know we're getting into the weeds here, and I'm going to leave it at that. But the bottom line is, no, you need a Mac. And even if you have it on a Mac, it's not compatible back to iOS directly. So your Mac projects aren't going to be able to go straight back to your phone. So keep that in mind as well. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't want people to go chasing the what is it, the rainbow unicorn of GarageBand on anything but an Apple device, because it simply ain't gonna work. And if it does work, it's gonna work in such a clunky, stapled together, sticky taped together fashion that you won't be able to record any quality audio. That's my opinion and my experience anyway. We'll continue on to our next question. So this is about the Steinberg UR22C, my favorite audio interface, from Peter. Says, hi Pete, thanks so much for all you do. Your videos have taught me a ton. So the question, I bought a UR22C based on your review, connected it to my iPad Air 2 running iOS 13.5, plugged in an AT 2020 and 2021 to record my acoustic guitar using GarageBand. The sound from the input side using the mix knob is great, but when I turn it to the DAW, sounds very thin and metallic. Recordings come out that way too. I'm just using the nice room default GarageBand. Any advice? So I use the Steinberg UR22C, and in fact, I'll be using it to record some acoustic guitar this afternoon because I'm doing my happy hour show where I'm actually recording a demo as part of my happy hour show. So tune into that one, and you'll actually see how I'm going to set up to do that. But yeah, the only thing I can think there is the settings that you've got. Like the nice room is what I use to record acoustic guitar. And if it's sounding tinny, it may be your mic placement. What I would also do is maybe try plugging direct in if you've got an acoustic guitar that has a preamp built in, not a preamp, a pickup, and try plugging directly in. Try recording some vocals as well. Try moving the position around. I know you're saying that it's sounding good if it's coming through your direct monitoring, and then it's not sounding good coming back through the DAW. The other thing to keep in mind is you're always going to get a little latency. So sometimes that tinny, thin, metallic sound is actually the sound of you hearing yourself playing and it coming back a few milliseconds later. So keep that in mind as well. Make sure you record it in and then turn off the monitoring completely and then listen back to the pure audio coming back. That's just a few tips. We'd need more information to troubleshoot it fully, but hopefully that gives you and others a few ideas if you're struggling with the same sort of thing. Let's move on to the next question, which is this one. Blue Sunset. This was my video during the week, The Future of GarageBand iOS. Blue Sunset says, Pete, I read that Apple is about to launch Logic Pro X for iPadOS in September. Maybe. How will GarageBand be? Are you ready to switch from GarageBand to iPadOS Logic Pro X? So, the rumors of Logic coming to iOS have been around the place for a little while. I don't believe, and again, I have no inside knowledge, but I'm reasonably confident that we're not going to, in September, with all the other things happening with iOS 14, with Apple moving to silicon chips on the Mac, I don't think we're going to see an iOS version of Logic in September. I'm pausing that so that you can clip out that soundbite in September when they release it and say Pete was 100% wrong, because I'm super happy to be proved wrong. In fact, it will work out really well if I'm proved wrong, because in August this year, so if you're watching this live, starting from about a week's time, I'm going to start exploring Cubasis and Auria Pro. So I'm going to start exploring two other digital audio workstations, both of which cost about $50, so they're not free like GarageBand, but both of which have a bunch of different features. The main purpose of that is to give folks like myself an idea of what GarageBand has, doesn't have, and is it worth upgrading to something else. So if Logic Pro then came out in September, that'd be golden, because then I can just extend the series and jump in and do Logic as well. So what am I going to do? I'm going to try this stuff because I've been using GarageBand for about 5 years. It does everything I need it to do most of the time, 90% of the time. Do I need to spend $50 to upgrade to Cubasis or to Auria Pro? Well, we're about to find out. And you can save yourself the money, see how Pete goes with it if you're a GarageBand user, and then if it looks like it's something that's for you, then you'll find out. And I thought that was the best way to do this, to document my experience learning a new DAW so that folks can actually find out if it's worthwhile for them. Move on to the next question here. So Leonard says, "Hi Pete, please, I need your help. Maybe out of context, I have an audio interface that only have mic or instrument combo input, but doesn't have line inputs. Is there any solution for me to use an external preamp? From what I know is the output from the preamp should plug into line inputs on the audio interface. Please help me. Maybe anyone here can help." Yes, I can help. So if you're not familiar with this, your standard audio interface, here's one I prepared earlier. I'll just bring my screen back over here. The standard audio interface, like this Behringer, will have inputs here, like this one. It's got a combo jack, and then it's got an instrument jack. So combo jack has your preamp for your XLR connection, so that's for your microphone. If you're then plugged in here, it's an instrument level. So these ones only have instrument level inputs, which is different to a line level input. These are a high Z or a high Z or an instrument. So if you do plug your line in here, so say you had a stereo line output from a preamp and you plugged it into these two ports. They're both 1/4 inch, it would work, but you're not going to get the best quality because these are designed to have your guitars plugged in and your instruments. Now, your higher end interfaces, like your Steinberg UR22C or your Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, they've actually got two inputs that you can switch between line level or instrument level. And for those, they're going to work better with an external preamp. So, and here's the other thing. If you're using an external preamp, it means you want better quality audio coming in. So I wouldn't bother using that because you're not going to get the bang for your buck. You might as well stick with your built-in preamp in your audio interface as opposed to having a lower quality audio interface, getting a higher quality preamp. You're going to bottleneck at the interface. So I wouldn't actually spend your money buying a preamp, an external preamp, until you've upgraded your audio interface to one that actually has stereo or at least mono line input. That way you can send your preamp directly in there and you'll be good to go. Hopefully that helps you out. We'll continue to the next question. This is from Adam. Why can't I hear my 808 without headphones? So this is probably related to a question we were talking that John had earlier in the show. And this is around the bass response. Bass, I mentioned bass a lot because it's the number one instrument sound frequency that is really hard to balance and get right. Because if you're listening, so I'm listening on these are Sennheiser HD280 Pro. These are my go-to studio monitor headphones because they're really flat. If I had a pair of Beats by Dr. Dre on right now, I would be hearing so much more bass in my voice right now, in my music, in everything I do, because they hype the bass frequencies. Remember, frequencies or EQ, equalization, is simply a volume control for the different frequencies. Have you ever seen those curves on microphones and on headphones that show you where the responses are? That's where they're boosting different frequencies. So a headphone that has a lot of bass boost is going to boost in those low frequencies. That means it's going to be easy for you to hear your 808. Well, I know you say you've got the other way around. 808, if you're wearing hypey, bassy headphones, if you then switch over to a pair of earbuds, which I'm suspecting you're probably using, or Bluetooth earbuds, you're not going to hear that because these don't have that hyped bass. So what you would generally need to do is turn up the bass so that you can hear it more. There is also a thing which is the lowest frequency that you can hear with a particular device. So particular headphones, most of them start around 20 hertz and they go up from there. Some, the lower quality ones, don't even go that low. So some you may not hear much under 100 hertz. And a lot of your 808 sound, a lot of that thump and that kick from your bass sound is happening in those lower frequencies. So that's potentially what's happening. If you go to your car, you play it in your big subwoofer system in your car, then it's going to sound killer. And then you come back in and you put it on your headphones and you're like, where'd my bass go? That's the sort of thing. So you may need to find ways to enhance that bass, to bring it up a little bit in your mix, or better way with EQ, bring down your treble and then bring your overall volume up, because you don't want to overhype your bass so that it sounds great on earbuds but absolutely terrible on something that has some bass. Again, it's that balancing act we talked about before. Hopefully that helps you out. Question here from Wesley. How are you? I'm well. How are you? Thank you so much. My guitar plugin has feedback every time I need to do this. I'm putting only iRig interface. It doesn't work. Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to talk about this one because I've been doing some guitar recording lately, experimenting with different devices, experimenting with the very original iRig, my Tascam IXZ, some of the analog interfaces, and also trying out different digital interfaces as well. And there is a definite problem there with your analog interface around crosstalk and feedback. So when you're playing a guitar, there's a lot of natural feedback, right? And you want that, especially when you dial in a nice distorted, crunchy tone, you want a bit of feedback. But what you don't want is that crosstalk feedback, that screechy, just grating feedback that comes in. You know, you've all heard it. It's the classic thing of, you know, whenever anyone goes to a microphone on like a TV show, it's like that. And they get away from it because the speaker's feeding back into the microphone. It doesn't actually happen in real life that much, but every time like a principal in a TV show goes up to the microphone, it's like, yeah, it's not real. But yeah, it's that same sort of thing. So the digital interfaces, however, have kind of solved for that, because the way that they actually interact with the your device is that they're doing all the analog to digital conversion. The problem with plugging in an analog device using, say, your headphone jack is it's sending an analog signal in there and it's relying on your phone, which doesn't have a great analog to digital converter, to do all that conversion. It means it picks up feedback, it picks up noise along the way. You're going to get a hissy, noisy, feedbacky kind of signal. The beauty of using a digital connection, even something as affordable as your Behringer UM2, is you plug your guitar in here, it does the processing, it sends it out via USB as a digital signal. That's going to give you a better, higher quality signal going out into your DAW. So it may be time to consider upgrading your original iRig to something like the iRig HD, the iRig Pro IO, or an audio interface like a Behringer, Steinberg, Focusrite type device. Hopefully that helps you out. Continue on here. Next question here is from Arstide. Hello. Hi there. Is it possible to swap the order of my clips in an already published video? So we're switching a little adjacent here to releasing videos, because as musicians, we do a lot of video work as well, especially if you're like me. What I mean by this is, for example, if I have a clip at the end of the video, is it possible to move it to the front? Is this possible? Short answer is no. So I have done a few videos on this, on editing your videos once released. So this is super handy. Say you've got a live performance that you've recorded, or like me, you do a show like this, you want to be able to go back in and maybe cut off or trim off the start or the finish, or there's one song that was just terrible and you want it to no longer exist. You can actually go in and you can trim out. But here's the thing, you can only remove bits of a video completely. You can't change them, you can't add them, you can't reorder them. So the only thing you can do, say you've got an hour of a live set and you want to go back in, you want to cut off the minute where you were clicking the buttons at the start, trying to work out if the live stream was working, and you want to cut the last sort of 5 minutes where you just ran to the end, and track 4 was just terrible, so you want to cut that out. You can do that. Trim the start, trim the end, cut out that one song, resave it, you're good to go. But yeah, unfortunately, you can't do anything like this, which is move things around. You want track 3 to be track 2, you can't do that. You want to add in an additional recording of another track, you can't do that. So just wanted to mention that, because I know a lot of folks not only record audio, but are also interested in video sharing on places like YouTube, and that might help you out if you have those questions. Last one here that we have on the pre-done, and then we'll circle back to the folks who are here live and find out from them if there's any other questions that they have before we finish up. So this one is around how to master in GarageBand iOS. It was the video, and the question here was, where do you get the AU limiter? So I wanted to talk about this briefly. If you're a GarageBand user, GarageBand iOS, there's actually 15 free AU plugins that aren't in there by default, but that you can add in really easily. So all you need to do is go into your settings, and there's a little tick box there that says Enable Audio Unit Plugins. You tick on that, you close and reopen GarageBand, and boom, you've got yourself 15 free plugins. Now, they used to not be super useful because they used to not save your settings. When you went into those plugins and you set them with different parameters and then went out and back in, they would reset. It was a pain in the butt. But that's been fixed now, so you can use all of these. So what do you have in there? Well, you've got things like peak limiters, you've got different types of reverb and delay plugins, you've got the new pitch plugin, which is really cool for changing the pitch of your notes of your tracks. There's a bunch of stuff in there. It's worth checking out. If you search my name, Pete Johns, Apple plugins, there's a heap of videos on the channel where I explore them, and I show you how to enable them. So if you're doing mastering using that peak limiter, it's a super simple way. I'm doing a project at the moment for someone. Shout out to you, Kerry. And I've did her mastering, and it's such a simple way because she's a great singer and she sings and records the backing tracks. When I'm mastering, there's really nothing to do. The final mix sounds so good, I just want to give it a little bit of a volume boost. So all I do is go into GarageBand, drop the overall volume a few dB to sort of combat the auto normalization, throw on the peak limiter, add back in that few dB, and all it does is smooths out that top. It brings up the overall mix so that your final mastered version has a little bit more punch to it. It's a little bit sort of closer to 0 dB in more places. That's what you really want with that. So thank you to all the folks who have thrown different questions my way during the week here on YouTube. And you can get in touch with me if you go to studiolivetoday.com. My recommendation, though, is to join some of the community groups that we have. So if you're a Facebook user, head over to createrecordrelease.com and you'll be able to join Create Record Release. Unfortunately, I am but one person. I do work many hours a day with this, but yeah, I don't have the time to get and to give personal advice and help to every single person. I would love to. I would love to have an extra 24 hours each day to do that, but I don't. So my best advice is to go to Create Record Release. If you then want that next level and you want to contact me for any sort of coaching or training, then you can do so, pete@studiolivetoday.com. Feel free to reach out and I can let you know how I can help you in more detail. Let's jump back over to the live chat here. And we'll see if we have. Thank you to Jade, who's doing a great job moderating here, as always. She's dropped a couple of links there down below to my editing YouTube videos and to my GarageBand free AU plugin videos as well. Let's continue on here. I'm just going to see. I'm scrolling up to find the word question. So let's see if we have any final questions. Hello, Sun Ray has jumped on in. Gary Hubbs is here. Thank you to you. Bubba has a question. Bubba's question is, I have the now discontinued product red Apple loops. Since they are out of print, so to speak, can I zip them up and share them to friends without fear of penalty? Let's have a drink and a ponder of that. So if we think this through, so the product red loops, I think you had to pay for them. I think you paid and that a donation went to charity, to the Product Red charity, which is the Bono sort of led, influenced charity. And they're no longer available. As you say, they're no longer available. I think they were around GarageBand 2.0 or 2.1. You could get them. I never got them, so I don't have them either, which is a bit sad. I would like to have them. So selfishly, yes, totally, you should completely do this. But what Apple have said around their loops is that anyone can use their loops for free, for commercial purposes, and the only question mark would be there, because they provided these as a paid service, is there any problem with that? But you know what? I paid $7.99 for GarageBand when it first came out. So I paid for GarageBand and now it's free. So given that you might have paid a donation for these and now they're free, I don't think it would be a problem. I'll ponder on it some more. I've got to work through the ethics and also the copyright. But I mean, if you gave me all of those loops now and I produced a song in GarageBand using those loops and released it, no one's going to know that I didn't have the product red and you did, and then I got the loops through you and then I released them. Because Apple have just said, use all of the loops we have in GarageBand, do whatever you want with them. So yes, I think if you then tried to package them up and sell them, clearly that would be bad. If you just released just the loops like as a song, then that would be bad. But yeah, I think it would be okay. Let me think about it. Let me think it through a little bit more. Any final questions here before we finish off? No. Tom Rochelle says studio quality headphones with a very flat frequency response also helps. Yes, Audio-Technica makes very good ones. Yeah, Audio-Technica, AKG, Sennheiser. If you get any pair of anything they make that's probably in the $50 to $60 or higher range, you're going to get a pretty nice flat frequency response. So could be good. And Scott says it's a crappy feeling when you have something sounding great in headphones, but then it sounds crap in the car. I hear that. Absolutely. Oh, and Scott says that Masterclass have a Danny Elfman one too, I just noticed. Very cool. I didn't even notice that. There you go. I'm definitely going to have to jump on over there. And Scott also says Tom Morello and Hans Zimmer are probably my top two on the list to check out. Yeah, if I had to recommend two that you go for, but here's the thing. If you buy two, that's about the same cost as a yearly subscription. So if you're going to watch more than two masterclasses, and again, I know it's a commitment, I know it's an investment, not everyone's got the money to invest, that's totally cool. But if you do want to, then do that. Or hang out, because I'll be reviewing the Hans Zimmer one, the Sheila E one, a bunch of others over the coming weeks and months. So if you do want to hang out and see my reviews first and see if it's right for you, then feel free to do that as well. I think we are all good here. I don't think we have any final questions here. So that is going to do it for this episode of Home Studio Q&A. Head over to studiolivetoday.com if you've got any questions or want to find out anything else about what goes on here on the channel. Thanks again for being here, folks, and I'll see you next time.